So the third thing we wanted to cover was back to Starmer, the welfare cuts that he's been making. And there's a graphic as we're speaking coming on the screen now. He said something in 2015. It is morally indefensible to cut the welfare bill. And then fast forward to 2025, as you can see on the graphic here now. What's he doing?
Cutting all the benefits.
That's absolutely appalling, and it's. I mean, we're having a laugh, but actually, it's very serious because.
No, I can't laugh about this.
No, I can't laugh about it.
I'm
serious.
watching people struggle, and people, really suffer. There are people that have been working and who have paid their taxes, and who have now had illnesses. My friend, she got cancer. She's very, very poorly. She can't work now. She's had to go on PIP. Although she's come through like the recovery. She's just not ready to work yet, and she's worked all her life, and her payments are being cut. She can't keep a house. She can't look after her children or her grandchildren. She's struggling to high heaven, and it's not okay what Keir is doing, because what happens is when you're sick anyway, and then you have the stresses of monetary and financial issues. Unfortunately, that actually can cause more illness, because what happens is within our bodies, stress is actually kept in our fascia, and our fascia it holds all the emotions that go with it. And if we're not fixing it or healing it or kind of delving into what's going on, because we are being absolutely obliterated financially by the government and by Keir Starmer's cuts, then guess what? You're not going to get better, and it can add more illness onto what is an already existing illness.
And I think as well, it's not just the physical, it's the mental, the shame that comes with it, because I'm going to make an admission here on camera, which I've never said before. I went through a mental breakdown a few years ago, and I found myself on benefits. I couldn't work mentally. I had real bad anxiety. I know people hear me as a kind of loudmouth gobshite and all that, but I'm not actually. I'm actually quite a quiet person. I'm very sensitive, really, underneath all this kind of Welsh bravado. But I went through a time when I relied on and it wasn't enough. I mean, I went to food banks. I mean, I put this out there. So, but I just want people to know: don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed if you've got to go to a food bank. Sorry, I'm starting to cry. Don't be afraid if you need to go on benefits because you're not fit to work. Not because necessarily it doesn't have to be a physical disability. I mean, I was suicidal. I was my life, fell apart. And admittedly, most of it was decisions I'd made. And I relied on the system, but the system was broken in such a way that I struggled. I found myself, almost begging people for help. So I've actually been there. So I didn't expect to do this. So I just wanted you to know that if you are struggling, you're not on your own. And I know it must be hard right now because you're trying to count the pennies. You're thinking about what food you can put on the table for your kids. You're wondering if you can get them to school, if you're going to have petrol in the car. I mean, I remember a time when I had to put my car into neutral and just freewheel down the road just to save fuel. Turn the aircon off. People might not know that because, I've had quite a luxurious life in the past. I've had, Porsches and nice cars and nice houses, all that kind of stuff. And then going from that to losing all that. And keeping that private, and I've opened up here tonight, which I didn't expect to do. It made me very vulnerable, Jojo, and it's hard, and people struggle. I was thinking about my mum. We talked about it in an episode before. She's on state pension, which is £200 a week. And if you look at the price of things, food, for example, today, the price of gas and electric. That's why this net zero madness drives me insane, because bills are going up. People are struggling, and these aren't people that don't want to work. These are people who genuinely want to work. A lot of people are trapped in a system where going back to work is they would be out of pocket, so they'd rather stay on benefits, and it is an evil trap, because with that comes a stigma, comes a sense of trauma and shame, because you think, man is supposed to provide, we're supposed to be the workers, but when you're going through a crisis where there's a physical disability or a mental illness or something's happened to you and you need some short-term help, for the government, and this, now I'm turning from being emotional to getting angry, for this twat Keir Starmer to turn around to people who he has no understanding of. The guy's minted, like a lot of them are, right? They don't have to worry about where their next meal's coming from. They're served caviar and champagne, you know, Moet Chandon at these special events at Davos in Switzerland, and you know, and they're given, you know, first class flights and treatment, private jets. And there's the ordinary man or woman who has to put his work boots on in the morning, his overalls, and can't even afford to get to work. He has to walk to work to feed his children, to feed his kids in 2025. That's what this government has done to this country. That's what politicians have done to this country. And I'm angry about it. And it really breaks me to see people struggling. And I think when you've been through it yourself, you tend to be more generous, don't you? Sorry, I've taken up a lot of the time talking. But I needed to share that because I think it's important for people to know. And I think that is why I think, you know, we're seeing a change in the system. We've seen how many Labour MPs, because they've got constituents now that are coming to them saying, look, you know, your leader, Keir Starmer, wants to cut our benefits. We can't pay our electric. We can't pay our gas. You know, we've got to top up a card. You know, people use these cards to top up. They've got no electric. I mean, we're in summer now, thankfully, in one sense, you know, because it's not as cold, but in the winter, and then cutting winter fuel loads for pensioners, like.
Forget the winter fuel, but you know what they're doing is they're spiking all the, you know, the costings anyway. And so here we are struggling to meet ends meet. You know, food on the table is really tough. You know, then you've got the prices of food is absolutely rocketing. You know, then the gas and electric. You know, the whole thing is so orchestrated. They are trying to kill people off.
Yeah.
And you know what the worst thing is that they're not taking seriously within the PIP and with the ESA or the Universal Credit, the mental health. They are trying to eradicate people with mental health issues. You know, and I've been Googling just like recently with the green paper, you know, sort of, which is in stages, isn't it, of kind of getting finalized and going through. But, you know, you know, even with my condition, like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, like it can affect a lot of people with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And, you know, it's quite alarming, like how they are cutting things out. And I mean, is he going to turn around on this? Is he going to turn back because he's going to be watching what Farage is saying? Is we going to mimic and copycat that?
Well, we got a clip of a Labour MP, Ian Lavery, in it talking about that. He was in an actual meeting with Labour MPs, and over 40 of them now have signed this kind of petition, if you like. These Labour MPs were in a meeting, and Ian Lavery was a Labour MP. He spoke passionately, which we'll show the video in a few moments, about, you know, his people, his constituents did not vote for this.
No, and they didn't vote for that. You know, they didn't enter into that party to actually watch their constituents like struggling so much. You know, if you're going into this, you're going into it. Some people are in it with the right reasons, some people are not.
Yeah.
And that's the concerning part, is like trying to filter out who is the right and who is the not. You know, and these people have gone to him, Ian, and you know, he's taken on board what they're saying, and the speech is so good and so profound. We feel like you need to watch it.
Listen, there's not one MP in here, by the way, was elected to make people poorer. Not one. And if you are, you should be you should feel a million shames. Look at yourself in the mirror. And look at the right honourable gentleman from East Ham, a good friend of mine, tremendous servant in this house. I wonder what went wrong. Why, when the rich are getting richer, the very rich are getting very rich, there's more billionaires than ever, more millionaires than ever, are we taking people on pennies? Taking away their livelihood, making their lives so miserable. In my constituency of Blythe and Ashton, it's one of the bottom 10% in terms of social deprivation. I've got 10,467 people dependent for their livelihood. They're not living a life of luxury. They're dependent on the PIP support just to live.